Kakalos Boker Tov, we're continuing on Daf Memhe Amud Aleph 45a1. If you remember, we just answered that Rabbi Akiva learns Mishrat. Since Rabbi Akiva learns from Mishrat the din of Heter Mitzaref Li'isur, which means that permissible, right? Something which is permissible combines with Isur, with something which is prohibited. Yeah, Heter Mitzaref Li'isur. So you cannot learn then the din of the Kal V'chomer to other Isurim. Why? Which means that it comes out of the pasuk which is teaching heter mitzaref li'isur to do with isur nezirut, and the pasuk which is also teaching about the chatat. Yeah, it's two pasukim which is coming to teach on one judgment, on one rule, and therefore em lamdin. So you don't learn from a binyan av when you have this, which means the chachamim that learn from Isha, they learn tam keikar. It's not shnei ketuvim ba'in keechad. Right? It's only if you learn it from the Heter Mitzaref Li'isur, it's two psukim that is coming to teach the same concept, and therefore you're not going to learn. Nazir Hadamran. The Nazir was what we just mentioned before from Mishrat. Chatat Maihi. What is the Chatat then? What is the Chatat that we're learning that it's Shnei Psukim, Shnei Ketuvim Ba'in Keechad? So it says, the Tanya was learned in a Braita. This is to do with a Korban, Chatat. Kol Asher Yiga B'Sara Yigdash. Anything which you're going to touch, its flesh, it's going to become holy. Okay, so it says really like this. Yachol, I would have thought that if you have a piece of meat of the basar chatat, it becomes holy, right? Just with nigiyah, afilu lo balea, even if it didn't actually absorb from it. Tamulumar bivsara. It's actually be with inside of it. It's not just enough touching it; it has to absorb. Achi bala babasar. What does it mean, igdash? Liot kamoha. Sheim psulahi tipasel, im kshirahi teachel, kachamur sheba. Which means, what does it mean igdash? Igdash means it has to be consecrated or holy, just like it. So therefore, if it's going to be psula, so then what's going to happen is tipasel. It's going to become pasul. Im kshirahi, but if it's going to be kosher, teachel, it should be eaten, kachamur sheba. Just like the chumrah, right, of what it is, which means that it's like two different things. So therefore, just like the chamur, so therefore it's teaching us that heter mitzaref li'isur. So therefore, since it's heter mitzaref li'isur, you cannot learn from mishrat to other things, because again, it's talking about too many things, learning from this. If you learn two concepts from the same, meaning from two different ktuvim abayin ke'echad, which means two different psukim which teach you the same concept, we don't learn from it, okay? Until here, everyone clear? Yeah? Okay, fine, very good. V'Rabbanan nami, and in Rabbanan also, Nazir v'chatat shnei ketuvim b'im ke'echad. Why, according to the rabbis, it should also be shnei ketuvim b'im ke'echad by Nazir and chatat v'em lamdin. Yeah, why? So therefore, why is it that the Chachamim say that from the Yisurim Nazir you do learn tam ki'ikar to other Yisurim? It should also be considered, right, two ketuvim b'im ke'echad, two different psukim which are coming to teach you the same concept. So the Gemara answers Amri, we said, Hanu mitzrich tzriche. They said these two psukim that are going to tell you the tam kikar, we're talking about that you can't learn, right, that the din is going to be noheg by everything, right, and therefore you can't learn it from everything else. Rabbi Akiva, and according to Rabbi Akiva, mitzriche, right, what exactly, why do we need two different psukim? Bishlama yikatav rachmana bechatat. It's good if the rabbis are going to actually write down and they're going to say that to do with the chatat, so lo gamar nazir mineh, so therefore you can't learn from the nazir from it. Techulin mikochim lo gamlinan, because chulin from kochim, right, we don't learn. Ela lichtov rachmana benazir, or why don't we learn from nazir? V'tete chatat, v'tigmor mineh, and learn a chatat and just learn it from it. Yeah, so he comes and he says that kol yisurin shabbat Torah kal kamin nazir, because all the yisurin shabbat Torah, you learn it from the nazir. Which means what the Gemara is now going to say is like this. Rabbi Akiva, what does he need, right, two different psukim? Why do you need two psukim? Yeah, he comes and he says, if you're going to say just chatat, so okay, fine, you can't learn nazir from chatat, because that's chulin and one is kodshim. Chatat is kodshim. Nazir is chulin. Yeah, so you can't learn it. But just learn it by nazir and learn the chatat from the nazir. Why? Because everything you learn from nazir. So the Gemara is going to answer you, the Rabbanan Amri Lechan, the rabbis are going to teach you, right? Umitzrech tzriche. They're going to tell you need both psukim. Why? Chatat to teach you heter is mitzaref for Yisur, and chulin mikodshim you don't learn it, and mishrat is titen tam keikar. and therefore we're going to make L'chol Yisur and Torah, which means like this. You need from the Nazir. What do you learn from the Nazir? Tam ki ikar. The tam is like the ikar. What do you learn from the Khatat? Heter mitzaref li'isur. Now you can't learn Nazir from Khatat, because Nazir is chulin, Khatat is kochim. So because of that, right, the Heter mitzaref li'isur you cannot learn from it, but tam ki ikar you can learn from everything. Rebbe Kiva and according to Rebbe Kiva, tarvaihu le'heter mitzaref li'isur. Both of them are coming to teach you the same yisod. Heter mitzaref li'isur. But then it's going to become Shnei Ketuvim b'Mikra Echad. And Shnei Ketuvim b'Mikra Echad l'amdin. You can't learn it from someone else. Means according to Rebbe Kiva, also by Nazir and also by Khatat, they both teach you that Heter mitzaref li'isur. So if it both teaches you Heter mitzaref li'isur, they can't learn it to anything else. Because once you have two psukim which are coming and they're teaching you the same concept, I cannot apply it. Meaning, if it's only written by one, I could come and I could start applying it to everything else. Because listen, it was only written in one place in the Torah, and then I start saying it's also compared to this and compared to that, and but if I'm gonna have two places in Torah teaching the same thing, I can't learn it from anything else. Because if I'm not gonna tell you 1 second, I've got it by Khatat and I got it by Nazir, but I want to apply it now to Metzorah. So why didn't you write it by Metzorah? I know, but you don't. Well, why did I have to write it in 2 other places? If I only wrote it in 1 place, so then okay, fine. So I'm gonna start applying it to everything else. But once I have 2 ketuvim bein ke'echad, I can't apply it anymore to more cases. Because if not, why wasn't it written? Kapish? Understand the svara? It's a very simple svara. Amal Ravashi Rav Kahana. So says Ravashi to Rav Kahana. Elahad tell you that which we learned on Raita, Mikol Asher Yasem, you give an ayam echatzarim v'zag l'lochel. That from anything which is made out of the wine, you're not supposed to come and you're not supposed to eat. Limed al Yisurei Nazir mitzarfin, which is going to teach us that it's going to be mitzaref, the different Yisurim of Nazir. Hashta Rav Akiva, and now according to Rav Akiva, Yisur v'eter mitzarfin. Right, when we say Yisur v'eter, it's going to be mitzaref. Yisur v'Yisur m'bayre. It should be Yisur v'Yisur, which means, right, that he comes and he says over here that it should be Yisur v'Yisur. Not only just Yisur v'eter, it should be Yisur v'Yisur. Right? Why? Because there, what we're talking about is Mishrat. We're talking about not that there's no Heter mitzaref v'Yisur, but even everything is Yisur v'Yisur. So Amalei comes and he says Yisur v'eter b'vatachat, or Yisur v'Yisur b'zeh chazeh. You're right. When are we talking about Yisur v'eter? When it's only in one shot. Meaning if I'm going to take 1 spoonful, and in that spoonful I have Heter, and I have Yisur, so it's mitzaref. Or if it's going to be Yisur v'Yisur, but it's going to be one after another. Not together, but rather one after another. Yeah, but if you eat it together, so then even the Heter is mitzaref to the Yisur. Okay? Fine. Mishnah Memhe Amud Aleph. Batzek. We're talking about dough. She besidkei areveh, which is going to be found in the little cracks and crevices where they come and they knead the dough. Yeah. So what happens is the following halacha. Im yesh kazait b'makom echad. Yeah. What happened? Yeah. Im yesh kazait b'makom echad. If you're going to have 1 kazait in one place, you're chayav levaher. You have to destroy it before Pesach. And if you don't have a kazait in one place, batel b'miuto, it's going to be batel. Yeah, you don't have to destroy it. If you're going to be makpid, chotzetz, it's going to be a chatzitza. Chatzitza is a separation. When you put something in the mikveh, it has to be 100% touching. It cannot be a chatzitza. In the water, without anything on your hands, without anything on your body, it's called a chatzitza. Band-aids, right? Band-aids, anything. It's called a chatzitza. The same thing would apply, right? We're learning now chuppah v'kiddushin. So there it says, if I'm going to give, right, a ring to marry off a woman, it has to be on her hands directly. There cannot be a chatzitza in between her hands and the ring. Meaning, let's say she has a glove on. She has to take off the glove and you have to put it on her finger. She cannot put the ring on top of the glove because that's a chatzitza between her hand and the finger. No chatzitza. For example, you want stickers. Yeah. So for example, right? I remember that we once had an event in the Kolel in 41st Street. Yeah. Some crazy caterer. Yeah. He comes and he left the stickers on the cups. So I already knew that they didn't do Tevilat Kelim. Now, how do you know they didn't do Tevilat Kelim? Yeah, very simple. Why is there a sticker there? So now, technically speaking, sometimes you could do Tvilat Kelim even with a sticker. For example, I remember once, my father-in-law, they bought a certain type of a glassware, and they did the Tvilat Kelim with a sticker. Afterwards, I went and said, you forgot the sticker. No, we want the sticker there. It was like a cheftza, you understand? It's something very important. Sometimes they have on the suits over here, you have a name. So now the majority of the suits, you're going to take off the name over here, the name time, because if you've got a suit which is a few $1,000s, you want the name there. You understand? You want to show. You understand? This is the suit. You understand? Yeah. Exactly. Some people add the name. You understand? That they want it there. So then it's not a chatzitza, but you want it. You understand? But if not, it's a chatzitza. Yeah. All these crazy caterers. But the truth is, though, you don't have to go that crazy. You know why? Because technically speaking, right? But technically speaking, yeah, because when you're doing business with it, it's called kles chora, and usually some types of depends on hashkacha, but some types of hashkachot they're going to be lenient that restaurants or caterers they won't need to do tevilat kelim for that reason. However, though, it doesn't always apply because, for example, the London Beddin, they're a mekel, if I remember correctly, only if it's china with glazed glass. Because there, anyway, technically speaking, china doesn't need tevilat kelim. You don't have to put china in the tevilat kelim in the mikveh. However, though, it's glazed glass. Usually, the majority of china, they have on top, it's like a layer of glass. It's called glazed glass. Because of that, glass is obligated in tevilat kelim. Even though it's d'Rabbanan, but you're obligated. You make a bracha. On earthenware, you don't have to take it at all. Glass, you have to take it and you have to make a bracha. Yeah. So because of that, they are lenient on that. Because since anyway it's earthenware is not obligated, and maybe you would only be obligated because it's glazed glass, but since it's like a caterer or whatever it is, so then they're lenient. But they're not lenient on regular glass, meaning just a regular drinking cup, they're not lenient. Yeah, but it all depends on the hashkacha. Every hashkacha is different. You understand? And right? And that's it. Just like there's crazy caterers, there's crazy hashkachot. Each one is okay. It's all everyone's crazy in their own way. Yeah, fine, very good. Let's continue. Yeah, and everyone understood. So therefore, it says over here that to do it tuma, if you're going to be makpid, it's going to be a chatzitza. But if you want it there, so then it's like kilu, it's part of the actual utensil in itself. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda Shmuel. Says Rav Yehuda the name of the Shmuel. Lo shanu ela makom she'en asui lechazek. Here we're talking about where the batzek, right, is not closing off an area in this areva, in this kneading bowl, in a place where it's not made lechazek, which means that it's not made to stop the water from going out. Yeah, lachzik et hamayim. Aval b'makom asui lechazek. But if it's going to be to hold the water there that you're using it to knead, eno chayav levahed. You're not obligated to come to get rid of this batzek, even if it does have a kazai. So mikral. So from here we want to learn, right? The pachom mikazai, that if it's going to be less than a kazai, even if it's going to be in a place where it's not asui lechazek, you don't have to get rid of it. Yeah. So he comes and he says, "Ika dematnila aseifa." Some people they learn this on the seifa. V'im lav, and if not, which means if there's no kazait, batel b'miuto. It's going to be batel, yeah, b'miuto. What does that mean? It's going to be batel b'miuto. Ika dematnila aseifa. Some people they come and they say that it's going on the seifa. What does that mean? They learn that what Shmuel said is going on the seifa. V'im lav. Now, if you don't have one kazait in one place, batel b'miuto. So I'm going to Shmuel says the name of Shmuel. Lo shanu, what are we dealing with? Only in a place where it's going to hold the water. Aval b'makom she'en asui lechazek. But if it's not going to be holding where the water is, chayav levaed, you have to get rid of it, even if it's going to be less than a kazait. So miklal. So you see from here, the kazait, that even if it's going to be a kazait, right? Even if it's going to be in a place where it's holding the water, you're still obligated to get rid of it. Why? Because obviously it's a kazait. Yeah, so it's not batel. So Tanya Krishna Kam and Tanya Krishna Batra. We have a Tanya, a Braita, which goes in accordance to the first Lishna, and Tanya, a Braita that goes in accordance to the second Lishna. Tanya Krishna Kama, we go like the first Braita that says a what? Batzek should be when you have batzek, when you have dough that is going to be found in the Sidkei Areva, which is going to be found in the Sidakim of the Areva. Yeah, in in a place where they're going to be holding the water, eno chotzetz. It's not going to be chotzetz. The eno over, and you're not going to be over on Pesach, which means like this. First of all, there's no problem of chatzitza that we already explained. That means if you're going to do tevilah to it, there's no problem of chatzitza. Plus, there's no problem of you're not going to be over on bali bali matzeh. That you're not going to be over that you have chametz in your vicinity. If it's going to be in a place where it doesn't hold the water, it is a problem of chatzitza, and you are going to be over on bali bali matzeh. But med when you these words in a kazait. But if it's got less than a kazait, so even if it's in a place where it's not a suli chazek, it's not going to be a chatzitza, and you're not going to be over. So remember, according to Lishna Kama, the yikar is the kazait. If it's a kazait, it's a problem. Less than a kazait, no problem whatsoever. If it's got a kazait, it's a problem. If it's not a kazait, it's not a problem. Okay? And kazait in one place, remember that. Yeah?
Chatzitza means that the dough that's stuck inside can create a concept of chatzitza.
Yes. And if you say that there's no chatzitza, there's no problem. Okay?
If there's more than a kazait, can it be considered chatzitza?
Yeah, that was the how do you call it? That was the first one. That if it's got a kazait, but if it has a kazait, if it's got less than a kazait, then no. Okay, but even if it does have a kazait, it also depends, according to the Lishna Kama, whether it was a sui lechazek or not a sui lechazek. Meaning, is it a sui to hold the water or not? Where is it exactly? The Tanek Lishna Batra. However, then now we're going to learn the next Lishna. The next Lishna was batzek should be steke arava. When you have batzek, which is found in the cracks over there, the makoma sui lechazek in a place which is going to be a sui lechazek to hold the water. Memheamud bet 45b. Eno chotzetz, it's not going to be chotzetz. Ve'eno over, it's not going to be over. In a place where it's not going to hold the water, or chotzetz, and it's going to be over. If it's going to be less than a kazait, but if it's going to be a kazait, it's always chotzetz. Meaning, the difference between the Lishna Kama and Lishna Batra is what's the yikar. According to Lishna Batra, the kazait is the yikar. The second it's a kazait, kaddish. I don't care about anything else. If it's less than a kazait, now I start going, does it hold the water? Doesn't hold the water. According to Lishna Kama, the yikar is does it hold the water or not hold the water. Then when I say if it doesn't, then when I come and I say that it's not going to hold the water, right? That it's going to be a chatzitza and you're going to be over, that's only if it's going to be a kazait. It's going to be less than a kazait, no. Meaning, where is it in the utensil to hold the water? Or not? Or if it's a place where it's not going to hold it. Okay, so that's where it all depends. Yeah, it's like storing the water. Okay. So now it says over here, so kashi nadati. So we have a contradiction. That means the two lishonot are contradictory. Because what's the ikar? The kazait, or that it holds the water or not? So Ravuna says, Ravuna, same kilta mikame chamirta. You have to erase the first braita, which is lenient, because the second braita, which is more stringent. Because the first one was a mistake, and it wasn't taught in the Beit Midrash. Okay? Rav Yosef comes and he says, no. Tanai shakalt me'alma. What? You're just going to take away all these Tanaim from the world? Tanai, it's a machloka Tanaim. The Tanaim was we learned in a Braita. Hapachi ipsha. When you have bread of chametz that started becoming moldy, chayav levaer, you have to get rid of it. You could come and you could make other yisot into chametz. Meaning, even though it in itself is moldy, you can make other things into chametz. Shimon Lazar says. But one of these words, only if you could actually eat it. But if you have a piece of seor that you designated it in order to sit down on it, it's batla, it's batel. There's nothing there anymore. So the fact that Shimon Lazar says batla, so it comes out according to Tanakama, it's not going to be batel. So you see from here that he holds any type of a kazait, even though you're going to be batel the kazait. Lo batil doesn't exist, the kazait. Meaning that a kazait can never become batel. Even though you remember batel examples, you want to now come sit down on it. Doesn't matter. It's not batel. Why? It's called a kazait. The second it has a measurement, that's it. There's nothing more to talk about. It has a measurement. Okay? So says the Gemara, Abaye comes and he tells him, Tiratzta bekazait. You only answer to do if it has a kazait. But did you answer now if it has less than a kazait? But rather both of them are going to be Rishimon and Lazar. And still not a question. The Braita, which was Mekel, when it says Makom She'enu Asri Lechazek, we're talking about a place where you're actually kneading the dough. The place where it's not the kneading of the dough, right? With that, we're going to be machmir. It's above it, so therefore that's why they're going to be much more stricter. Meaning, where do you need the dough? On the bottom of the bowl. Above, you don't need the dough. So therefore, we're going to be much stricter on the top part than on the bottom part. On the bottom part, where they actually do the kneading, it's going to be more lenient than the top part. So Amar Ravashi comes and he says, Lo tema shelo bimkom lisha agaba de'agana. He says, we're not talking about a place. Don't tell me that we're talking about a place where there's batzek that does not have a kazait. It's not going to be batel. It's talking about on the external part of the thing. Okay? So he says, no. Asifta de'agana. We're talking about bisfat ha'areva. Bisfat ha'areva means on the top part. Shelo bimkom isa. Not where you're actually kneading the dough. So says Ibn Pshita, obviously. So says Ibn I would have thought to say, Zimna datif matilatam. Sometimes you go up and it gets there. Kamashmalan, and therefore you have to make it like makom nisha. Kamashmalan, that's not considered makom nisha. Meaning like this. Yeah, basically it's like, it's a rim, the rim on the top part, right? Which means that you're kneading the dough down here, but sometimes it goes up. So I would have had a havamina that's, listen, up here it's also considered makom lisha, but once in a while I also need dough there. Kamashmalan, no, it's the top part. The top part, you don't do that. Yeah, it's a different halakha.
The bottom is just to hold the dough.
Exactly.
You need against the wall.
Against the walls of the thing. So Amar Rav Nachman Amar Rav says Rav Nachman Amar Rav Talachas like Shimon ben Lazar. So says Ganaini, is it so? Amar Rav Yisrael Bar Rashi Rav says Yisrael Bar Rashi name of Rav. Im tach panei betit. If you came and you wanted to actually put tit on top of it in order to sit down on it, it's going to be batla. Only if it's tach. But if you weren't tach betit, no. Which means that this goes against Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar. According to Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar, the fact that you went and you're going to put it, for example, you're going to come and you're going to put it to lie down. So even if you didn't do an action in the actual object, you're mevatel it. If I put, let's say, for example, wood, yeah, or I'm going to come and I'm going to put this thing in order to sit down on it. So even if I don't do any action in the actual item, that in itself, it makes a batel. However, though, but not like him, because he said that it's all, here you have to actually be tach. You have to tach petit, you have to put teeth on top of it. And by putting teeth, which is like clay, on top of it in order to sit down, now it's going to become batel. So says the Gemara, Mante matniha lo matniha. No, you're right. The one that taught this thing, that Alachazak Rabbi Shimon Lazar did not teach this concept about tach petit, because according to him, it's true, it's a contradiction. Ikedam, there are those that say the opposite. Amar Nachman Amar Rav, the Alachaz is not like Rabbi Shimon Lazar. Tamar Rabbi Shimon Rav, in tach panei petit, then it's batla. So that's exactly like that. That means Alachaz is not like Rabbi Shimon Lazar. Fine. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel says Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. Shnei chatzei zetim. When you have two half kizetim, yeah, of batzek. V'chut shel batzek b'neihem. Now you have a connection. Ro'in kol she'ilu yinatel hachut. We're going to say that if you were to take away the chut, nitalin lemor, is it going to be looked like a one or not? Because basically the chut is mitzaref. The chayav levayer, and you're obligated to get rid of it. If not, eno chayav levayer. So imagine you've got less than a kazait here, less than a kazait here. Each one on its own, we already learned, was nothing. But what happens if they're connected? We're connected with a thin piece of dough from one to another. Does that connection come now make it that now it's one piece? String. It's like one string. But it's a string of dough. But it's a string of dough. Yeah, it's a one string, but it's a string of dough. Okay? So now that's what it says, chut shel batzek. It's a string, but of dough, which is in between them. So now we look at it, right? Kol she'ilu yinatel hachut. If I would take away this chut of batzek, yeah? If these two chatzei zetim are going to be taken with it, so then it's all one. Right? Because then the chut is mitzaref. Meaning like this. I've got dough, a string. Yeah? Or if you want, you have here. No, this is opposite. Because you understood. Okay?
But all that has to be in a bowl, right?
Dough, make it thin. A string in between. So what happens? If I would take the string in between, would I take the doughs with it? If yes, then it's all connected. If I would just take it, it stays there, they're not connected.
That's all within the bowl.
Within the bowl. We're talking about within the bowl.
So, technically speaking, they would stay there.
Just let me just hold on 1 second. So says the Gemara, yeah, he comes and he says now like this. Yeah, so you have two chatzei zetim and a chut shel batzek b'neihen. Ro'in kol she'ilu yinatel hachut. If you would take away the chut, it's going to be taken away of it, and then you're obligated to get rid of it. But if not, then you're not obligated to get rid of it. Says the Gemara, Ula says, Lo amran ela ba'reva. When do we say that you're obligated to get rid of these two half kazetim? when they're found in the kneading of the dough. Aval babayit, but if they're going to be found in the house, chayav levayer, you are obligated to get rid of it, even if it's not connected. My tama, what's the reasoning? Because sometimes you get everything together with a broom, and then all of a sudden they come together. Meaning, even though that each one on its own is less than a kazait and there's no problem, sometimes you're going to start brooming up, and all of a sudden you have a kazait in one spot, and then you have a problem. Exactly, the boulder is separated, but here sometimes you're just going to put them together. Amar Ula says, Ba'u b'ma'arava, they had the question in Eretz Yisrael. Bait v'aliyah mahu. What happens if you have a chetzi zayit of batzek in the house, but chetzi zayit you have it in the house, and chetzi zayit you have in the attic, like in the upstairs. So what's the halacha? Or bait v'achsadra, you have half a zayit in the house and half a zayit in the courtyard in the front of the house. Ma, what's the halacha? Or shnei batim zerifim zeh, you have two houses, one within another, right? What's the halacha? Teiku, we don't know the answer.
Really?
Yeah, we don't know the answer. We don't know. I don't know. We don't have the answer. Okay. Next, we learned in the Braita. When you have bread that started becoming moldy and became pasul from eating of human consumption, but a dog could eat it. So it's still going to be mitameh tumat ochlin when it has a kabetza, which means that as long as the dog could still eat it, it's still a food. And it's going to be burnt trumat teorah together with trumat me'ah on Pesach, on Erev Pesach. But since it's not fitting anymore for achilat adam, you're allowed to be mitameh b'yadayim. You're allowed to purify it with your hands. No, it's not going to be mitameh tumat ochlim, it's not called ochel at all. So who does this go like that which we learned in the Mishnah? We said a general rule in Tarot. Anything which is going to be designated for ochel adam is going to be tameh. Till it's going to become pasul for eating it for a dog. Keman, who does that go like? Obviously not like Rabbi Natan. So according to Rabbi Natan, he said it becomes, right, the second it's going to be pasul me'achilat adam, there's no tuma anymore, because now it's not food anymore. There's nothing there. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. Arevat abdanim. We're talking about now these big barrels of the skinners, the ones that they do deal with skins, that they put it in kemach and flour and all these things in order to actually process them. That you put inside of it kemach, within the 3 days before Pesach, you have to get rid of it. Call them shoshayim, but if it was before 3 days before Pesach, you're not obligated to get rid of it. Amar Rabbi Natan says, one of these words, you didn't put it inside of it, orot. But once you put the orot inside of it, so even within the 3 days, you're not obligated to get rid of it. Why? Because even though it wasn't mitkalkel the kemach, because by putting the orot there, you're mevatel the kemach from food, and you're making it into like a processing material. It means even though it's food, the second you put the skins inside of there, it's not food anymore. It's like a processing material. Okay? Skins. You put skins inside of kemach in order to process it. To process the skins. You know what skins are? Leathers and all these things, right? To make so you take the skin of the animal and then you make your me'abed orot. So how do you do that? You put it with kemach and other things and you process it. So if it's kemach in itself, so first we said that there was a difference between before 3 days and after 3 days. Within the 3 days, you have to get rid of it. Before 3 days of Pesach, you don't have to get rid of it. Then afterwards, he went and he said, no, that as long as you put the orot inside, even within the 3 days of Pesach, it's okay. Why? You mevatel it from food. Now it's not food anymore.
Like the hay.
Exactly.
Anyway, we said that kemach is not chametz.
Yes, technically, yes. You're right. But you have to be careful, though, because once, even nowadays.
If you have a bag of kemach in the house,
no, so you do have to sell it. Think of it this way. Kemach cannot be chametz. How do you know kemach cannot be chametz?
We do with the matzah.
How do you do matzah?
Yeah,
so obviously, kemach in itself is not chametz.
Kemach
So,
and water is not chametz.
right, exactly. Kemach and water with not separate.
Separate.
Exactly. Separate, they're not chametz. No, once they're together. Oh, exactly. Until 18 minutes. Okay.
But
No, you're right. You're right. Yeah, between 0 and 18. Or 0 and 17 and 59. Yeah, but basically, yes. 100%. Okay. Amar Rava. Rava comes and he says, Halacha k'Rabbi Natan, Afilu yom echad, that even if it was going to be 1 day, Afilu sha'achat, even if it's going to be 1 hour, which means mamash 1 hour before Pesach, I came and I put inside, it's going to be okay. Not the mamash before Pesach, before the Yisur of Biur Chametz. The same halacha would apply to Tumah. If you're going to be makpid, it's going to be a chatzitza. And if you want it there, so then it's going to be part of the bowl, right? That's what we said. Midami, can you compare both cases? Hata mishiura talyaminta. There it has to do with a shiur, which means the bitul of batzek. And here we're talking about kpeida, which means what are you comparing both cases? One of them we're talking about the shiur. Does it have a kazai, not a kazai? Here it has to do with whether you're makpid or not makpid. Meaning to do with the chatzitza, it's all to do with kpeida, not to do with the shiur. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Ema ulinyan tuma enoken, but it's not to do with tuma, it's not the same thing. So Amar Abaye, it's not said ulinyan tuma enoken, it's written v'chen linyan tuma. So Amar Abaye, but rather Abaye says haki gamar. This is what it means to say v'chen. The same halacha would apply to tziruf tuma bePesach. Uveshad Yom HaToshana, there's a machloket. Techi dami, what's the case? For example, if you have less than a kabetza, v'chule v'chule v'chule, that will continue tomorrow. Have a wonderful day, everyone.